Today's video is going to be a furniture flipping challenge. About 3 times a year over on Instagram, I host a furniture flipping challenge, and the theme this time is light or dark academia. So I'm going to show you the piece that I did for the challenge, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to show you all the participants and who won the challenge. Let's go. So for my challenge piece, it is beautiful. I love burlwood. It does have some damage on some of the drawers. My biggest problem is going to be 2 of the hardware are missing the pulls. And this is recessed hardware, and I have done a preliminary search and I just can't find anything. So I'm really not sure what I'm going to do with the hardware. So I may have to find something that just covers the whole thing, a big plate that I can just screw in that covers the whole thing, and replace all 6 and just go ahead and keep these and polish these up. I'm not sure, but overall, it's in pretty good shape, but obviously needs a full refinish. I think it's going to be beautiful. I'm not sure if I'm going to go dark or light, because I could go light and this burl would still be beautiful, or I could just oil it up and it would be beautiful too. So I'm just not sure. I'm just going to start by taking everything apart, stripping it down, and then we'll see. Am I going to go with light academia or dark academia? I don't know. We'll see. I always like to start with taking off all the hardware. So this one has all of the brass accents on the side. So I just use my 5-in-1 tool and a small hammer, and I'm just going to pry out the little nails and then gently remove them. I'll put them in a dedicated Ziploc bag, and then I'll get them all polished up later. I'm going to start with a really good vacuum with my shop vac, and then I'll go in with a degreaser. Today I'm using Osmo as my degreaser. You can just dilute it in water and it's a fabulous cleaner. Now I'm going to go ahead and start stripping. So today I'm using Blue Bear soy gel, and it's just a jelly substance. I'm just going to apply it with a chip brush, let it set, do its thing, and then I'll come back and scrape it off. I'm using my carbide scraper. Now these can be really harsh, so I'm barely putting any pressure on this scraper. I'm just trying to get it to get off that finish. I like to go with the grain if possible. Obviously with burlwood, there's not really a direction of the grain, so I'm just going with the direction of the drawer. Then I'm going to use some mineral spirits just to get the extra residue of the stripper off. The top has a border of the burlwood, and then the middle part, I believe, is walnut. So I'm just going to use some lacquer thinner on the top to get the rest of the residue off. And then on this section, I'm just going to come in with my carbide scraper, and I'm just going to get any additional finish off. I'm still being pretty gentle, even though this is a walnut part. It's not as fragile. I'm just still being gentle. You want to be careful with your carbide scraper. It's a fabulous tool, but it can really gouge up your wood too. So I've had to kind of learn how to use it so that I can use it effectively and not actually harm the wood. Then I'm going to move on to sanding. I'll start with an 80 grit. This is a section of the drawer that had some damage, so I'm just trying to kind of sand out that damage to see if I can kind of blend it into the surrounding wood. And here's the before and the after. It's already looking really good. Some of the drawers had a border as well, so I'm going with the grain where I have grain, and then for the burlwood sections, I'm just going to go horizontal. For the burlwood areas, I'm going to start with a 150 and see if that's aggressive enough to be able to get the finish off. And then I'm going to finish up with 220. I'm cleaning it off with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water, and I'm just going to see if there's any areas that I might have missed in the sanding process. For the top, I've already done a rough sand with my orbital sander, and now I'm going to switch to hand sanding. A lot of people ask me why I hand sand. I tend to be a little heavy-handed with my sander, so I like to hand sand a lot. That way I'm just not messing up any of the veneer. So I'll start with 80, then I'll go up to 150, and then I'll finish out with 220. The reason I'm finishing with 220 is because I'm just going to tone this, and that's what it recommended, because I'm basically just putting a toned top coat on the finish. So it recommended to raw to do 220 for this particular top coat I'm using. I'm cleaning the top with the 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water again, and I'm just checking to make sure there's no areas that I might have missed with my sanding. If there's any additional scratches, if I need to refine any of my scratch pattern, this is the time I want to do it before I move on to my sealer. So after doing a lot of research, I decided to tone the piece. So they said with burlwood, the best thing to do is a dye stain. Well, if you use straight dye stain, there's no going back. You know, it just penetrates deep into the wood. So the next best thing I decide is I'm going to tone it. So what you do is you use a top coat, and then you do about 10 to 20% of a dye stain mixed into your top coat. So I'm using about 15%. Is what I ended up with. And so I'm using General Finishes dye stain. This is light brown, and this is their high performance top coat in satin. So I'm just going to make sure I strain it, and I'm going to mix it really well, and then I'm going to test it. I'm going to spray it on a very small section and see what I think. This is the Erlex 5700. This is new to me. I'm really loving it. I'm still kind of working out a few little things on it. You'll see later. But so far, it's giving me a really good finish. So earlier when I sprayed on some denatured alcohol and water, it was pulling really orange. And so I wanted to test this and see if that light brown was enough to kind of cancel out some of those oranges. And so this is the time lapse. You can see this is my little test spot. I think it looks really nice. It's not too orange. You can see when it dries a little more caramely. So I'm pleased with this. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to go ahead and spray the whole thing. So while that dries, I'm going to move on to my staging wall. If you remember, this is a challenge piece. So the challenge is to kind of embody the academia feel when you're staging something. So I'm pulling out some pages out of a formal logic book that my kids used, and I'm just taping them together. And I'm just going to create a little backdrop for my dresser and kind of embody that academia feel. I'm going to wipe down the dresser one more time, and then I'll be ready to go ahead and spray out the toner. So the thing with the toner is, what you have to remember is you're actually spraying like a tinted top coat. So you don't want to hesitate the gun in a specific spot because it'll put extra product there and then it'll kind of look blotchy. So I had a couple areas that I kind of hesitated in, and then I had to go back and kind of fix it. And so just it is kind of a learning curve. I had some spitting on with my gun, and so I had to go back over those areas carefully, but I don't want to go over them too much or it'll lay too much product down. So there's a bit of a learning curve with the toning, obviously with my spray gun too, because I'm kind of learning the settings on it. But overall, I'm very pleased with how it went. I had some problems on the first two drawers. It just felt like the sealer wasn't coming out. So what I noticed is that the sealer had built up on the tip. So I just took my fingernail and just kind of wiped it off. And then after that, it went smoothly. After I did the first coat, I liked the color. So I decided I'm not going to do another coat of the toner. I'm just going to leave it here. So I'm just going to let it dry overnight, and then I'll come back and seal it. I soaked the hardware in boiled water and vinegar, and then I'm going to come back with some Barkeeper's Friend and a light abrasive, and I'm just going to get that polished up. So after I let that dry for over 12 hours, I'm going to come back with a hard wax oil and I'm going to seal it. So I'm going to do 2 coats of this, and it'll provide a really durable finish and a nice low luster shine. So for the hardware, two of them were missing the actual ring pulls. And so I couldn't find a replacement anywhere. I did an extensive search. So I thought, well, I'm just going to have to replace them all. And so I found some that I thought might work at Lee Valley. And it was about $150 to buy all six. So quite an investment. When I got them, they didn't fit in the little routed out area. So I had to use my Dremel, and I had to actually carve out some area, which made me very nervous because, I mean, this is permanent. I'm carving out some of the wood, but I just went really slow with my Dremel. I'm just sanding out those areas very carefully so that the new pulls can fit in. So again, I'm trying to be really careful. I'm doing a little sanding, and I am trying to do a test fit. And then I do a little bit more sanding and then another test fit. But these will fit in, and then there's actually screws on the outside. So I'll have to drill some holes, and then they will secure right onto the face of the drawer. So I think it's working. And so I'm really pleased because they're really good quality. And even though I was really kind of nervous to do this, it's actually working. As I'm putting all the screws in, I make sure to line them up all horizontally. Those are just those small little details that can make a big difference on a piece. So there was two drawers where you could kind of see the cavity underneath. So I decided I'm going to fill that area in. So I'm using Quickwood. This is a two-part epoxy, and you just pull out the section that you need, knead it together with your hands, and then you're just going to apply it, let it dry. So I'm just going to kind of test fit it with my pull and see and make sure that it kind of fills in that gap. And then after it dries, I'm going to come back with just a little bit of my veneer paint, and I'm going to just paint it in so that it matches the surrounding wood. I was missing the cabinet magnetic latches, so I just picked up a new set from Amazon and installed them. The drawers had spaces for some dividers, but the one on the right were missing both of them. So I just had some extra wood and I decided to make a template from the one on the left drawer. I'm just going to go ahead and cut 2 new pieces, stain them up, and install them. As a final touch, I'm going to use Howard's Feed and Wax, and I'm going to refresh all of the drawers. They're in fabulous shape. They don't really need to be lined because they are beautiful. I'm just going to refresh them with the wax. So let's look back at the before. We had some damage on one of the drawers. You can see there, and then I was missing 2 of those ring pulls. The finish overall was a little dark, and so I wanted to try to go lighter. Obviously, the top had quite a bit of scuffs and nicks, and honestly, some of that hardware on the corners was pretty beat up as well. So after stripping and sanding and having to get a little creative with some of those ring pulls, I think we did it. Here's the finished product. What do you think? I love it. I love the color. Do you like my backdrop? Does it look academia to you? Then I restage it with listing, but I love the color. I love campaign and I love burlwood. And to have a combination on a dresser is like, wow. This is like, doesn't come around too often. This has been probably one of the best quality dressers I've ever worked on. This is a hickory, and man, solid wood all the way through, and just a delight to work on. I loved it. This was my piece for the light dark academia. I was trying to go for a light academia, and I think I did it. I think it turned out really good. So now let's move on to the rest of the challenge. I'm going to show you the other participants and who won. The Light Dark Academia Challenge is done. It's time to pick the top 3. But before we do, let's take a look back at the before and afters. Here are the top 3. Come back to my stories tomorrow and vote for your favorite. The winner will receive a cash prize and be featured on my YouTube channel. I love doing these challenges and connecting with fellow furniture refinishers. I try to do about 3 challenges a year. The next one will be in February, so be looking for an announcement in January if you want to join in. But come to my stories tomorrow on Monday to vote for your favorite for the Light Dark Academia Furniture Challenge. Congratulations, Samantha from Wildwood Rose Furnishings Co. for winning the Light Dark Academia Challenge. Here's her piece. Samantha decided to go with the dark academia theme with this vanity set. So it did have quite a bit of damage on the top, so she went ahead and started to sand it all down to raw. You can see it's already looking beautiful, even just being raw. She added a little extra detail on each of the sides with some texturing medium over a stencil, and it provided a really cool effect. Then she painted out the body with a custom mix of 3 different colors of paint. She stained the top and the legs. And then she polished up all of that beautiful original hardware. See how dated these drawer liners are? She was able to get those to a more modern look. And then she reupholstered the seat as well that went with it. So here's Samantha's staging. I definitely think it embodied the dark academia feel. It is thoughtful and refined. She was able to bring in several little details without actually obscuring the piece. Definitely a lovely aesthetic, and I think she nailed it on the staging. So you can find Samantha at Wildwood Rose Furnishing Co. both on Instagram and on Facebook, so go give her a follow. I'll also put a link to all of her socials down in the description box, but please join me in congratulating Samantha for winning the Light Dark Academia Furniture Challenge.